Hello, my AP World History students. Coming at you live through a recording this week, and I wanted to accomplish a few goals. As you know by now, the test this year will be purely a DBQ, and they've made some modifications to how that DBQ will look, especially how you're going to be scored. And I think this actually plays to your guys' strengths, so I wanted to quickly review the rubric. And it's important that you guys understand how you're going to attack earning points on this DBQ. So if you want to follow along, what you need to do is open OneNote. And in OneNote, just so we're clear, there is a tab that is labeled Test Review. So make sure you have that. And in that folder, I just uploaded something that says Modified DBQ Rubric. And I just want to quickly go over the scoring system for this year. As you see right here, it says the Modified DBQ Rubric for the 2020 exam administration. What you're going to notice right away is that the first 2 points for the DBQ are exactly the same as they were before COVID-19, which is you must, the number one thing you must do in this essay, the point that we are absolutely trying to get you to get, is a thesis. All right, and that's still going to be an introduction paragraph. And it is the same exact style as if where it has 7 documents. Okay, so you're still looking for those connections. You're trying to find the connections between the documents that answer the question, that gives you your argument. All right, this is your historically defensible argument. What argument are you going to make based on the prompt? And then the second point that is going to remain exactly the same is the contextualization point. And I have a second video I'm going to be making to give you a cheat sheet for how to do contextualization. So keep an eye out for that. Maybe I'll post a link right here on this document for that cheat sheet. Okay, now here's where things get interesting and I think actually play in your favor. So on the previous rubric, you got 2 points for evidence. They have now upped that to 5 points. So this is a 10-point rubric. The original rubric used to only be 7 points. So here in the middle, you now have 5 points for evidence. But let's see how that breaks down further. So let's look at each one individually. You will get 1 point, all right, 1 point if you can accurately just summarize the main idea of 2 documents. It says uses the content of 2 documents, but it has to make sense. It has to be accurate and it has to connect to the prompt. So you have to be, if the prompt is about trade routes, you have to accurately summarize the document in a way that it connects to trade routes. Like Europeans in this document clearly wanted luxury goods. All right, so if you can just summarize 2 documents, you will get a point. Okay, for an additional point right here, it says and 1 point if you support an argument in response to the prompt using 2 documents. So again, using 2 documents. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. So this is where the language matters, right? So in the first point, you're simply using the documents. For the second point, you are using them in a way that they're helping defend your thesis. They are backing up your argument. You are using historical evidence to support your thesis. You're not just explaining what the document means, its main idea. Okay, but if you can do the main idea for 2 and then support an argument for 2, now you're at 2 points total. Okay, now here is a third additional point. If you support your thesis with 4 documents total, you will get the another point here. Okay, so there's a total of 3 points. So it's like you use 2 documents, check, you get a point. Now, if you use 2 documents and now you've also used 2 documents in your argument, there's 2 points. If 4 of your documents are used to support your argument, well, then you've kind of hit all 3 of these and you will get 3 points total. Okay, now the next part of the rubric that is still listed under the evidence category is called evidence beyond the documents. This is where you bring in any historical knowledge that you have somewhere in your brain that relates to the prompt. Now, the catch is it can't just be merely a phrase, right? Like going back to the example I just gave, if the DBQ is about trade networks over time or something like that, you can't just say like, oh, Europeans wanted pepper, right? Let's say none of the documents mention spice. You can't just be like, oh, people liked pepper or people liked spice. You have to somehow integrate your knowledge of the Spice Islands and the Malaccan Straits and like maybe like monopolies and how the Dutch controlled the Spice Islands through forced labor. Now you're integrating outside evidence. Now, what it means by outside evidence means that none of that stuff I just said, the Malaccan Straits, monopolies, the Dutch, can be in any of the documents. It has to be completely unmentioned by any of the documents given to you. And if you can pull off 1 additional piece of evidence, you will get a point. If you can pull off 2 pieces of outside evidence, you will get a second point. So there's a total of 2 points for outside evidence. All right, so that brings our grand total to 7 points. So 3 left to go. All right. The next section is called analysis and reasoning, and there's 3 points total here. So this year we have been working on hipping documents, which is one of the hardest skills to teach and to learn how to do, which is where you try to explain why the author's point of view, their purpose, the situation in which they were living, or their audience matter. How does that affect the document, and how does that affect how you're using it as evidence? Why should we consider if this document is coming from a woman's point of view, or if it's coming from a slave's point of view, if it's coming from a king's point of view, a merchant's point of view? How does that change their outlook on the world? And how is who they're writing to matter? So this is a hard point to earn. We're going to practice this in the next couple weeks. So it used to be you had to get at least 3 documents hipped for just 1 point. Now, if you can just hip 1 document accurately, you're going to get a point. And if you can hip a second document, you're going to get a second point. So really you're getting a point per document. So it's in your best interest to maybe try to hip at least 3 or 4 documents just in case 1 isn't good. So here you have a total of 2 points for a hipping, which is pretty cool too. And then the last point you can earn is what's called the complexity point, which is barely ever awarded based on conversations I've had with readers, and it's kind of a holistic look at your essay, and they really just kind of look at, did you make a really good argument? Did you use really good historical evidence? Did you make connections really well between the documents and explain how one document contradicts another, or how one document is clearly supports or is connected to another document. So if you like, this is the one I usually try to teach you guys how to do. If you can do both a similarity and a difference, or if you can explain how something both stayed the same and changed. So if you address both sides, if you, of those ideas, what are called the historical thinking skills. So let's say your whole essay compares the similarities between the trade routes, right? The silk and sea roads. Now let's say for the whole essay you're mostly focusing on comparing them. How are they the same? But then once in a while, or in its own paragraph, you say, however, they were also different, and you address the opposite side of the argument. That's how you're going to get the complexity point. Or if you're explaining how trade has changed over time, but then you also say, however, some continuities and how it stayed the same is, upper class people always wanted luxury goods. So if you can do both sides of these historical thinking skills, that is where you're going to get the complexity point. So that is the new DBQ in a nutshell. And again, I think it's really beneficial for you guys. I think it actually plays to you guys' strengths. The majority of the points are going to come from being able to just use the documents and integrate them into an argument. And we're going to nail this thesis thing. And I also am giving you a cheat sheet for context, which you probably can have available to you when you're taking the test, because they have declared that these are now open note tests. Which doesn't really help you with the DBQ because you don't want to be wasting time searching through your notes. But I did compile something that is going to be useful for context that you can quickly glance at to help you start developing that first paragraph. So that will be posted in another video. Stay tuned.